First impressions are everything. Which is why I added an echo effect and the editor just dumped a load of confetti on you. You want to get people in early and have them interested to see more. Some video games dramatically fail at this, turning what should be a euphoric reveal into a cannonball into the void. I'm Sai, this is WhatCulture, and these are 10 video games that instantly pissed fans off. Number 10, Metroid Prime Federation Force. Had Metroid fans really not suffered enough with the excruciating wait for a legit successor to Metroid Prime 3 corruption? In 2015, 2 years before Metroid Prime 4 was finally confirmed by Nintendo, before going into hiatus, they announced the first new Metroid game in over half a decade since the widely divisive Other M. Yet despite fans expecting, or at least wanting, Metroid Prime 4 or at least a worthy spin-off, they got Federation Force, a co-op FPS exclusive to the Nintendo 3DS. The infamous reveal trailer was widely derided online for brazenly showing off how the game deviated from Metroid's classic formula, scaling back exploration to focus on multiplayer action, adopting a more cartoonish art style, and even lacking Samus Aran as a playable character. But don't worry, we're making up for it with Blast Ball. You wanted sports in your Metroid game, right? Irate fans ultimately created a petition asking Nintendo to cancel the game, and while that didn't come to pass, fans did at least vote with their wallets, ensuring that Federation Force flopped at retail. You deserved it, Federation Force. You deserved it. Number 9, SimCity 2013. SimCity fans had been waiting an entire decade for a new entry when the franchise reboot finally released in 2013, so as you can expect, excitement was at an absolute fever pitch. But that swiftly deflated when the game launched with an always online requirement, and because EA's servers couldn't keep up with player demand, network outages prevented players from, playing the game for days on end. Even those who could get in suffered crashes and unexpected disconnections, and when EA refused to offer refunds, fans responded by petitioning the White House to enact legislation mandating returns for games with always online DRM. And in so desperately trying to prevent SimCity from being pirated, Maxis and EA alienated their most eager fans, and with an online mode only being added to the game a year after launch, it's little surprise that it underperformed commercially. This led to the closure of Maxis Emeryville in 2015, just as Paradox Interactive released their own city builder, Cities Skylines, which of course went on to critical and financial success and basically devoured SimCity's place in the market. The always online nonsense didn't just piss off fans, it killed the franchise. Number 8, Metal Gear Survive. Though Metal Gear creator Hideo Kojima acrimoniously parted ways with Konami following the release of Metal Gear Solid 5, nobody expected the publisher to leave the franchise alone without Kojima. It was of course inevitable that they do something with it. But did it really have to be Metal Gear Survive? Hey, what have you got there, Tony? Is it a deep stealth-based game with lots of interesting lore? Stick some zombies in it. In the summer of 2016, less than a year after Kojima split from Konami, the publisher announced a survival game spin-off created without Kojima's involvement, and as you can expect, a generic-looking zombie-fighting multiplayer action game isn't exactly the future that most Metal Gear fans envisioned for the series. This vitriol sustained through to the game's release in 2018, where it received mixed reviews from critics and flopped commercially. In fact, the sales were catastrophic enough that Konami didn't even report a number, a first for such a storied franchise. Honestly, if this is the best that Konami can do for non-remakes when it comes to Metal Gear Solid following Kojima's departure, maybe just don't bother in future. Number 7, Diablo Immortal. If you thought the vitriolic reaction to Metroid Prime Federation Force's bait and switch was extreme, it was positively polite compared to how fans received Diablo Immortal. At BlizzCon 2018, Diablo fans had been led to expect a very special announcement, but rather than get their first look at a long-awaited Diablo 4, they were instead subjected to a trailer for the aforementioned free-to-play mobile game spin-off. At a post-reveal Q&A, one fan infamously asked, "Is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?" to a round of cheers from the fuming audience, and things only got worse when principal designer Wyatt Cheng asked booing fans, "Do you guys not have phones?" With Diablo being a franchise which owes all of its success to PC players, Blizzard's decision to funnel resources into a microtransaction-packed mobile-exclusive Diablo game was never going to go down well, and yet Blizzard was said to be mostly blindsided by the backlash, in turn basically confirming their tone deafness over the entire matter. Still, it didn't stop Immortal from generating over $100 million in revenue in just 2 months, so It's only so far that pissed off can get you. Number 6, Fast and Furious Crossroads. Fast and Furious Crossroads never really stood a chance. Developed by the rather pathetically monikered outfit Slightly Mad Studios, this action racing game was revealed at the Game Awards in 2019 by Michelle Rodriguez and Vin Diesel, who lent their voices and likenesses to the game. More to the point, Crossroads was announced as the one more thing at the end of the Game Awards, a slot that's typically afforded to an attention-grabbing Megaton game, not a naff-looking movie tie-in. Because even the most hardcore fans of the Fast and the Furious franchise were left unmoved by the reveal, which touted hilariously dated visuals, especially the character models of the main cast, coupled with some generic gameplay. When Crossroads came out, it was near universally panned by critics and players alike for basically every aspect of its production. From the manner of its reveal onwards, it was a game that seemingly did everything it could to leave fans seething. And as the icing on the cake, it ended up being delisted barely 18 months after release, likely because Bandai Namco didn't deem it financially worthwhile to renew the Fast and Furious license agreement, and who can blame them? Number 5, Pokemon Sword and Shield. Pokemon fans were naturally jazzed, as always, for the next generation in the series, in 2019 this being Sword and Shield. That is until series producer Junichi Masuda confirmed a few months before release that many existing Pokemon wouldn't appear in the game, with no option for players to transfer Pokemon from prior games into Sword and Shield. Irate fans rather cleverly dubbed the situation Dexit, in reference to the National Pokédex, which lists every Pokemon that's ever existed, and campaigned passionately for developer Game Freak to reverse course, which they didn't. And though Sword and Shield still released to broadly positive reviews, there was a general sentiment that its visuals, story, and gameplay failed to meet standards that should be expected out of one of the most lucrative IPs in the entire world. The lack of depth, dated graphics, and overly easy gameplay meant that even die-hard fans struggled to muster much enthusiasm for it, and it's generally regarded as a lesser entry in the series. The whole Dexit debacle was just the tip of the iceberg, really, and it's actually not something that they fixed as far as I know, so that's fun. Number 4, Silent Hill Ascension. Konami once again put the boots to long-suffering Silent Hill fans by announcing that the first entry into the survival horror franchise in almost a decade, since 2014's PT, if you can even count that, would be an interactive media experience that splits the difference between video game and TV show. Silent Hill Ascension launched last Halloween and allowed players to watch a cinematic animated series unfold over 6 months, with players using phones or web browsers to vote on character choices and partake in communal QuickTime event sequences. You can practically imagine the monkey's paw curling when Silent Hill fans collectively begged Konami for more content and ended up with this. Fans were incensed by basically everything about Ascension, from its awful visuals to its risible writing and is this an AI voice acting? And because all of this wasn't gross enough, it was also packed to the gills with microtransaction nonsense, being a free-to-play game and all. By the time it finally ended back in April, the sentiment from most Silent Hill fans who hadn't completely forgotten about it was merely, thank God. Number 3, Mighty Number 9. When it was first announced, Mighty Number 9 actually had a lot of goodwill behind it, being touted as a spiritual successor to the beloved Mega Man franchise, and even having the co-creator of the character Keiji Inafune on board as a writer. The game amassed more than $4 million in crowdfunding during early development, but enthusiasm began to wane as the game suffered through numerous delays, and gameplay footage indicated a visual downgrade from early concept footage. But the last straw well and truly came when a new trailer dropped roughly a month before release, which included a now infamous line about the player's ability to, quote, make the bad guys cry like an anime fan on prom night. Even accepting how corny it is to make fun of anime fans, it's an especially bewildering choice given that anime fans make up a large portion of people who would actually be interested in playing Mighty Number 9. There's nothing quite like actively shading your own customer base. It didn't help that the game ultimately released to disappointing reviews and remains one of the all-time most painful instances of a promising Kickstarter project failing to materialize a quality end product. Number 2, Astrobot. PSVR owners will take every opportunity they can to extol the virtues of Astrobot Rescue Mission to anyone that will listen, saying that it was effectively PSVR's Super Mario 64 moment. And to be fair to these evangelists, Rescue Mission was pretty excellent. It remains easily one of the most impressive, downright entertaining offerings on Sony's first attempt at bringing virtual reality tech to the console-owning masses. And so when rumblings recently emerged emerged that Sony was cooking up a new Astrobot game, many were hopeful that it would also be coming to PSVR 2, Sony's brutally under-supported technical powerhouse of a VR headset that was released last year. But when Sony formally unveiled Astrobot for PS5 in a State of Play presentation in May 2024, not a peep was said about PSVR 2 support, making it crystal clear that the game can only be played on a PS5 without the extra kits. Now look, there's plenty of excitement about the game in general. Heck, PlayStation could really do with building up their mascot platformer for their portfolio right now, and Astro's Playroom that launched alongside the console kicked ass, but given that Astrobot had his coming out party on the first PSVR and started out as a mascot for the headset, PSVR 2 owners were understandably miffed at the new game having no support whatsoever. Also, couple this with Astrobot Rescue Missions still not getting a PSVR 2 port, and many saw this as the final indication that Sony were only going to minimally support the headset moving forward. And number 1, Artifact. Nothing quite tops the hilariously foaming hatred spewed by the audience attending 2017's Dota 2 World Championships, where Valve dropped a surprise trailer for a new game. With rumblings doing the rounds that this was going to occur, fans figured it would be something big, maybe a new entry into Half-Life or Portal or Team Fortress or maybe even Left 4 Dead. But as the vague CGI trailer ended by revealing the game's title to be Artifact, the disappointment was compounded by confirming it to be a Dota card game. At this point, the 1,000-strong audience immediately broke out into a mixture of boos and incredulous laughter, and considering that the crowd was mostly comprised of die-hard Dota fans, that even they heckled the announcement of a Dota card game really says it all. The lesson here, as with most of these PR pratfalls, is that messaging is really important. Nothing pisses off players like setting them up to expect something great, only to give them a card game instead. And I love card games, but this was not it, guys.